Yeah, everyone please make sure to cover your ears. It is very, very loud.
Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Millie with the CA, also known as Militzer, but better known as just Millie. This is my first video on this channel and it's an exciting one too, because I've spent the last 3 months on a break from my PhD to do an internship with the demonstrations team at the Royal Institution, and this video documents my incredible experience there. If you don't know already, the Royal Institution, better known as the RI, is a science communication charity in the UK. They do a lot of outreach work with schools all over the world and hold different types of lectures and events. You may know them best for their annual Christmas lectures, which air on the BBC in the UK or on YouTube if you live elsewhere. In mid-October last year, I joined the demonstrations team to create a 1-hour version of the 2024 Christmas lectures for touring, which will be performed around the UK and even internationally in Hong Kong. As part of my internship, I also got to help out with the Christmas lectures themselves, from brainstorming ideas for demos to building some to even being in one of them, so stay tuned to see all of that. When I first arrived at the RI, I got a tour of the whole building from my manager Mike, from the museum to the famous theatre itself. Mike is also a member of the heritage team as well as the demo team, so he had plenty of fun facts to divulge. Here are some of the ones that I remember. Apologies to Mike if I get any of them wrong. This is the grand entrance, which used to be the original entrance of the RI and has a statue of Michael Faraday, who was one of the most instrumental scientists in the RI's history. Notably, he actually founded the Christmas lectures back in 1825 and pioneered the use of demonstrations to share scientific discovery. He also did a bunch of very important scientific work while at the RI, especially when it came to the practical use of electricity. This lift, which is staff use only, is one of only 2 lifts with this specific mechanism. Unfortunately, this does mean that if it breaks down with you in it, you'll be stuck there for a while, because the nearest person who knows how to fix it lives several hours away. Outside the theatre, there are a few artefacts on display and some paintings of past lectures. The fun fact here is that if you look closely, you'll see that the paintings depict the lectures that these original artefacts were used in. Next is the lecturer's corridor, which has pictures of previous Christmas lecturers and examples of props used in their lectures in between all of the old and rare books. There are even more books like these in the other rooms on the first floor of the RI, like the library and the writer's room. Traditionally, this is the corridor that discourse speakers would walk down before a discourse started, after being locked in the speaker's room at the other end of the corridor through the door that you can see. Supposedly, the tradition of locking the speaker in a room was because one speaker ran away before a discourse. And finally, in the Georgian room, there's a painting of all the notable scientists at the time it was painted, which I checked does include at least one woman. And those are all my fun facts about the RI. So after my first day, I met the whole demo team, Dan, Judith, Mike, Jason and Grace, and got to work on understanding the preliminary scripts and began to develop the shortened touring version. I went through the scripts many times and they did change a lot over the course of the months leading up to the lectures, but I managed to boil them down to 6 sections or acts so that there would be a cohesive narrative for the 1-hour version. I also had a go brainstorming some demonstration ideas that would work for the touring version, some of which I ended up pitching for the TV lectures, and one of which is actually a part of them. During the first week, I also got to help with the corporate event. The RI hosts a lot of corporate clients and some of them want to see demos, so my boss Dan did a few classic demonstrations. One of them was this glowing pickle, which involves applying a voltage to a pickle to make it glow. Pickles can conduct electricity thanks to the salt they contain, and they glow yellow as a result of the sodium ions in the salt. All of these demos had something to do with the history of the RI. For example, this is Faraday's motor, which demonstrates how a current-carrying wire moves in a circle as a result of its magnetic field interacting with the magnetic field of a permanent magnet. After that first week, preparations for the Christmas lectures began to ramp up, and the demo team did a lot of brainstorming of new demo ideas and designs of existing ideas. These are a couple of examples of some early ideas and designs for demonstrations. On the left is an initial design for the transparent twin, which eventually became the Da Vinci-style roll-down image of Chris's digestive tract. In the middle is an idea for a demonstration explaining combustion. The combustion demo was instead done using volunteers and confetti cannons. And on the right is an idea for a demonstration explaining ATP production. This demonstration ended up being done using leaf blowers, a balloon, and bubbles. Around this time, we also recorded some promotional videos for the Christmas lectures with the RI digital team. These videos then went up on the RI social media pages during the weeks leading up to the lectures. Here is Jason doing a flower shower, which was used in a video explaining how we can find out how many calories are in different foods, and it also ended up being included in the RI's take on the hot-to-go TikTok trend. The first video I did was about the bromelain in pineapple and how it breaks down the mucosal layer of the mouth to cause a tingling sensation, therefore explaining why pineapple juice is used in packaged meat industry to keep the meat tender, with a little demonstration to prove it. The second video I did was the classic Coke and Mentos experiment, and I explained how it is a physical reaction caused by the rough surface of the Mentos providing a nucleation site for carbon dioxide bubbles to form, and how additives in the Coke make bubble formation easier. I'll leave a link to both of these videos in the description. Then it was time to move to Makerversity. If you've never heard of Makerversity, it's a co-working and workshop space in the basement of Somerset House, and the whole demo team moved there for a few weeks to start building the demonstrations. As you can see, there was a very long list of demonstrations that needed developing. I helped out with a few of them, like the Food-O-Matic and Operation Epiglottis, and led on some of the others, like the ATP machine, the Lecture 3 pre-titles, and the timeline. During this period at Makerversity, we also had several demo familiarizations, which were essentially meetings where we would present progress on the demos so that Dr. Chris Van Tulloken, the Christmas lecturer, could familiarize himself with the demos and how they would work once they were finished. For example, here is the fire tube that was used in Lecture 3 to emphasize what changed the evolution of our ancestors' eating habits. This is a gingerbread burning in liquid oxygen, which was supposed to show how much energy there was in carbohydrates, but it was cut before the lectures because there was already a mini chip pan fire to demonstrate how much energy was in fats and oils, and we didn't need both to make the point about energy in food. We did, however, use this demo in the Scratch Night, as you'll see in a bit. Another demo that was tested extensively was the carbon snake, which had to be done on the roof because it needed to be the fast and dramatic version rather than the slow and safe one that uses sugar and baking powder. The fast version uses sugar and sulfuric acid instead, producing toxic fumes in the form of sulfur oxides, which you can see coming off the carbon snake as it rises from the beaker. This demo was live streamed from the roof during Lecture 2 to make a point about carbon being an important element to food and life. And finally, we have the thermite reaction, which was used in Lecture 3 to show what conditions may have been like on the early Earth, and how iron was the first ever meal as it was eaten by microbes known as autotrophs. Thermite is a mixture of a metal powder and a metal oxide, for example, aluminium powder and iron oxide. A magnesium strip is then heated until it sets alight, giving the demonstrator enough time to step away before the magnesium sets the thermite mixture alight. The reaction produces molten iron, which drops into the water bath and cools down into a dropping-like shape and can then be fished out. Fun fact, during the actual filming of Lecture 2, the thermite reaction didn't work the first time, so it had to be reset and refilmed. Not long before we moved back to the RI from Makerversity, we were asked to get some animal and plant masks for the Lecture 3 pre-titles, but there were copyright issues with most masks that could be bought online, so I decided to just make my own. Over the course of a day, I made masks of a cow, sheep, wolf, and 2 plants using PVC foam and a trusty glue gun. All but one of these masks were used in the pre-titles, and eventually masks of Chris's face were also introduced for the human characters. The week after we moved everything to the demo room in the RI from Makerversity, we had Scratch Night, which was an opportunity for the demo team and Chris to run through some of the Christmas lectures demos in front of an audience. I got to help Mike with the burning gingerbread demo first, which, like I said, was cut from the actual Christmas lectures, but made a fun demo on Scratch Night.
Has anyone seen the film Shrek? That's a good reference point for what's going to happen here. Say hello, generic gingerbread person. And now say goodbye. So, I'm now going to add some heat to this sauna. So, on 3, 2, 1. Oh, you say oh now, but you wait. Oh, I know, the humanity. Sorry, I don't normally laugh like that. There's something about this demo.
Lord Farquaad's taken you over.
There's some lovely colours coming out there,
Or
isn't
maybe
it?
we should put it back in the lectures.
Backstage, we had all of the demos set up to bring on, and everyone was assigned demos to present or help bring equipment on for. Also, if you're wondering what that strange metal contraption in the right image is, that is part of the deconstructed Wheel of Doom, which was used to turn Chris's twin, Dr. Zand, upside down in Lecture 1. It was not used for Scratch Night, though. Next, I helped with the ATP demo, which I had done the building for while at Makerversity. I had actually had to learn a decent amount of plumbing to decide where to use one-way valves, how to match up standard pipe sizes, and how to connect the tap to the valves to the pipes using male and female connectors. At the time of Scratch Night, we actually hadn't tested out whether there would be enough of an airstream to produce bubbles from the rightmost pipe, but it actually did work on the night, as you'll see now.
We heard all of that, and we thought bubbles.
Bubbles, right. Okay, so I want you guys to be some... can we do this? We're going to get you
See if
to
we
be
can reach those. Yeah, do you
muscle
want to come
protein.
round?
So can you all put your arms in the air? When a bubble hits you, you're just going to move to the right and then back to the left again. And this is what more or less happens in your muscle, okay?
Hey!
Oh, look at this. Okay, so go along. That's great.
Finally, it was my time to shine solo with the hydrogen balloon, which was intended to demonstrate the flammability of farts in Lecture 1. Although Chris exploding the hydrogen balloon was filmed for Lecture 1, it actually wasn't part of the final cut, so you're about to get some exclusive information about farts. And if at any point you're wondering why I'm still finding new things to say about them, it's because the hydrogen balloon wasn't ready in time, and although I had planned what to talk about, I finished that and it still wasn't ready, so then I just had to ramble about farts until the balloon came out from backstage. It was traumatic. No, not really, but it was very funny in hindsight.
You might have just seen then handling the hose there. That was Millie. She's our intern. She's joining us to help create a 1-hour version of the lectures that will then tour around the country, the world even. We're going to take it out to places. So that's what she's doing. And we wanted to give her a demonstration to do. And one of our favourites that we always like to do, and we like to get new people to do, involves a balloon. Have we got a balloon? Yeah, we've got a balloon. And we thought we'd put a gas in that balloon. Any guesses what gas we might have put in the balloon? People have been here before, it's hydrogen. So please give Millie a round of applause. She does a hydrogen balloon.
One of the delightful topics we're going to talk about in the lectures is farts. Yeah, groans over here. And farts are quite unique to everyone, but in general they contain hydrogen, methane and carbon dioxide. And when these gases mix with oxygen, they create quite a flammable mixture. So your farts are flammable. Would not recommend trying that at home. But we are going to try it out, sort of, today, because we're going to have our hydrogen balloon that also has oxygen in it. And when I apply a little bit of heat, there's going to be quite the explosion. And the way that this works is because the hydrogen molecules are in there with the oxygen molecules. When I apply a bit of heat, the hydrogen molecules break apart, and then they form water with the oxygen. And when those bonds form, a lot of energy is released, and that's what causes the huge explosion. So in a minute, we're going to get the hydrogen balloon out and give this a go. Do you know why it's unique to everyone? Well, it's because we've all got different bacteria in our guts. So we've all got our own little microbiome, and the way that it processes the food means that we produce different gases. So everyone's going to have slightly different gases coming out. Okay, here comes the hydrogen balloon. This is going to be quite loud, so... Yeah, everyone, please make sure to cover your ears. It is very, very loud. So, yeah, definitely don't do that to your farts, because that might happen. Thank you.
And then all of a sudden it was the week of filming. As you can see, by this point the demo room looked a bit like an explosion had gone off inside it, but there was some method in this madness because all of the demos were getting finished in time for the rehearsals and the filming nights. During the first couple of days of filming week and a lot of the week prior, I was responsible for creating all of the felt images for the timeline that represented the evolution of food and humans. This was quite the task, and I spent a lot of time sketching out each image and then cutting it out of the different colours of felt and spending the majority of time with a glue gun in hand. Here are a few examples: the rusty bicycle, raw food, and Pangea. Out of those examples, only the rusty bicycle was used in the final timeline because the list of images changed during the last couple of rehearsals, but Pangea is currently in the archives of the RI, and the raw food image will be used in the touring lecture I wrote. As you can see, my desk resembled the rest of the demo room after this experience, but I did have a large pile of felt images, most of which were used for the timeline that you'll see later. Lecture 1 rehearsals were in full swing while we were finishing up demos for all 3 lectures, so we had begun to take over the ambulatory, which is the corridor that loops under the seating of the theatre and functions as the backstage area. The day before the filming of Lecture 1, we also filmed the Lecture 1 pre-titles, which most of the demo team were involved in. I got to wear boxing gloves and punch Chris in the arm to represent food being mechanically broken down by teeth when eating. The director told me to be more aggressive on multiple occasions, and Chris gave Mike and I permission to punch him properly. I must have done exactly that because on the very last take, I managed to pop the blow-up boxing glove on the last punch.
Entering a biological food processor is that. Now this happens every time you eat, and normally you don't even think about it. But that changes tonight because tonight we're heading down the tube.
The day of the Lecture 1 filming, we had 2 final rehearsals, one of which was the dress rehearsal. This is me rehearsing for the part of the butler that brings on a cloche with a pill camera inside for Zahn to swallow as part of one of the Lecture 1 demos. And here is me and Mike doing some last minute vinyling to make sure all of the plinths had the Christmas lectures text on them, which was of mixed success. But then it was filming time, which went shockingly smoothly given the chaos leading up to it, mostly thanks to Grace, the Christmas lectures intern, who told us all where to be and when, and also the hard work of everyone else behind the scenes. I had my brief moment as a butler, but the star of the show was Juniper the goat, who was there to illustrate how goats' microbiomes are different to ours. A fun behind the scenes fact is that there were actually 2 goats present in the RI because both of them get separation anxiety and need a friend to be there with them, which is very sweet. And finally, a photo of the poo machine because I have a behind the scenes story for this one. The day before the lecture 1 filming, we realised that the potties weren't going to arrive in time and we only had one. So the next morning, 3 of us had to drop by different Argos stores to have enough potties for the poo machine. So I had to carry a box with a potty in it on the busy train and then the busy tube. Was actually treated very nicely because the giant baby and potty on the packaging probably made everyone around me think I was a young mum. My arms hurt for days after carrying that box though, would not recommend the experience. But the poo machine managed to be finalised and it looked and worked great in the lecture. Although another behind the scenes tidbit, the final toilet, which had the elephant's toothpaste poo, did not work the first time during filming and had to be reset. This stuff happens sometimes, but thanks to the magic of editing, you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you. That was it for lecture 1, but there was no time to rest on our laurels because the next day we had to get back to work finishing everything for lecture 2. We started with some run-through rehearsals just like with lecture 1, where we as the demo team would pop in and out of the rehearsal as needed depending on the demo being shown at the moment. The rest of the time we would be in the demo room working on unfinished demos. So like here you can see Jason doing the carbon snake on the roof so that him and Chris could get their banter right and the production team could make sure the live stream, cameras, backdrop, etc. was ready. And here is a special demo, the Tesla coil, which was kindly donated by Professor Ricketts. I even got to try it out at one point, as you'll see later in the video. Here is Chris practicing channeling the electricity of the coil through a gauntlet, which was used to demonstrate how much voltage there is across the mitochondria in our cells, i.e. a huge amount. While rehearsals were happening, I was in the demo room working on the mitochondria machine with Jin, Zosha and Peter. There was still a lot to do on it the day before filming day, so we all pitched in to get the leaf blowers, tubes, balloon and tap splitter mounted onto a stand, which was repurposed from a basketball hoop and the poo machine in lecture 1. We ended up having to do quite a bit of DIY for this demo as we all worked together to figure out how best to put everything together in a secure way, and then we drilled everything in place and decorated it so it would look good on TV and fit with the steampunk theme. Fun fact, we originally wanted to put some copper pipes on the front to fit with the aesthetic, but Dan told us that it was better not to because the ATP machine would still be on stage during the Tesla coil demo, and we needed to minimise how much metal there was near the arcing electricity. If you watch the lectures, you will actually see me and Joe moving the ATP machine further back and then further forward before and after the Tesla coil demo, because even though there were no copper pipes, a lot of the essential parts of the mitochondria machine are still metal. And then it was filming time. I only have one clip from this filming day because it was quite chaotic and there was a lot of demos to bring on and off, so we didn't really get much of a chance to relax or film anything ourselves, but lecture 2 is my favourite for demos overall, so it turned out great. On to lecture 3. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the speed at which I'm going through this, imagine how we felt by this point. Very tired, but this was the final push and we all agreed almost immediately afterwards that we already missed filming week. We started by rehearsing the lecture 3 pre-titles, which were going to be filmed live in front of the audience, unlike the pre-titles for lecture 1 and 2, which were pre-recorded. There were a few different iterations of the pre-titles over the course of rehearsal, but in the end everyone settled on the concept you can see in the televised version. I especially enjoyed watching these rehearsals because I got to see my masks in use, except one of the plant masks which was unfortunately cut, but thankfully all the other masks found their place, and the lamb mask is actually now in the RI archives because of the starring role of the lamb. The Chris masks were added during these final rehearsals, and cutting them out was probably the strangest task I had during filming week. And then it was time to rehearse the Food-O-Matic 3000, which was designed to show how the industrial food system only uses a few crops to make most of the world's food by breaking them down into constituent products like cornstarch or oil. Surprise, it's me in there. I had the task of setting up cloches with the correct beakers and pushing each cloche out of the front of the Food-O-Matic when Janaina pressed the button, and the smoke machine was also switched on by members of the demo team at the same time. It was really cool to get to be a part of one of the demos, and I will be using this as bragging rights forever. We only did one rehearsal of the Food-O-Matic in the end, so I think everyone was not fully sure of how it would turn out, but as you will see, we managed to pull it off really well. And then it was once more filming time, for the last time. It was bittersweet because I think we'd all really enjoyed filming week overall, but we were also all exhausted by this point, so we were ready for the final push. Before each filming, the audience had a safety and information briefing and were also rehearsed for any demos that required it. In lecture 3, it was the timeline that needed rehearsing, and since I was leading that demonstration, I was introduced by Rosie as the timeline queen, and I got to brief the kids on what they would need to do during filming.
The gold ribbon behind you, can you please, if you're not holding an image, can you please grab it and bring it over onto your lap? So everyone in that row, yeah, that's great, thank you.
The filming of Lecture 3 went just as smoothly as Lectures 1 and 2, aka much more smoothly than any of us anticipated. However, there were still some things about the Food-O-Matic that needed ironing out, even while filming of the first part of the lecture was happening. One of the main difficulties during rehearsals was getting the corn oil to come out of the tap on the front. I tried a few times to use a syringe to push the corn oil through, but it was far too thick, so by the time of filming we weren't actually sure if it would work. During filming of the first part of the lecture, me and Yetin, one of the volunteers, tested a few different ratios of corn oil to water to see if diluting it would help, but in the end Yetin suggested just using regular sunflower oil, which worked great once it was actually time for the Food-O-Matic demo to be filmed. I think everyone, including myself, was surprised by how smoothly the Food-O-Matic demo went. In fact, it seems that I did such a good job pretending to be a machine that when Mike suggested that we reveal me being inside the box to the audience during a record pause, they were way more shocked than any of us were expecting, which was definitely one of my favourite moments from filming.
They are just taking off the machine there, which had our colleague Millie sitting in it the entire time, as you can see there. We'll be starting recording again very, very shortly.
Lecture 3 filming flew by and suddenly filming week was over. Well, other than the wrap party, which was great and a somewhat emotional time as we celebrated what we'd all achieved and said goodbyes to people we would no longer be working with. Julia also organised for all of the demo team to get these shirts with the fake orange fizzy drink logo from Lecture 3 that had Chris's face on it, which we all wore to surprise Chris and then took a photo all together. I'm so grateful to everyone who was involved in these lectures for making the experience so memorable, and I'll be treasuring these memories for a long time. You would think that after such an intense week we would all take a break, but it was not to be, as we had a live show to rehearse for, The Chemical History of a Candle. As tired as we all were, this was a really cool show filled with impressive demos, and rehearsals were great fun as we worked out which demos to include and how they would work. I helped out a lot behind the scenes in this show, but I also got to do a few demos, including the flower shower, which I did for the first time during rehearsals. It turned out really well, and I managed to get a tall and long-lasting fire going to accompany Jin's explanation of how the carbon particulates from candles set alight to create luminescence, just like how the cornflower particles are set on fire. I got to do a hydrogen balloon again, except thankfully I didn't have to talk about farts this time, and instead I talked about how flammable hydrogen is in oxygen.
Now, for something else that burns really well, another really good fuel, I believe Millie has a hydrogen balloon for you.
Whoa. Right, I'm going to get all the necessary PPE on, but this is a pure hydrogen balloon, and you might know already that hydrogen is very flammable, so especially in, well, solely in oxygen. So if I light the splint and then break the balloon with the splint, that should mean that the hydrogen can leave the balloon and react with the oxygen in the air, which will cause a big explosion. So put your hands over your ears and ready. 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
I then also got to help with some more hydrogen hydrox balloons along with Dan. The hydrox balloon with the E-match was probably the craziest demo I got to help with in this show because it was very explosive. After I hit that button and felt the blast of air on my face, I was tempted to check if I still had my eyebrows, especially since I was standing closest to the balloon so I could set off the E-match. All in all, it was a great way to finish the year, and thank you to Professor Ricketts and the demo team for putting together such a fun show. Everyone in the audience who spoke to me afterwards said that they loved it, and my family really enjoyed watching it over the live stream. After the Christmas break, I hunkered down for a few weeks and finished work on the 1-hour touring script. I also ended up creating a half-an-hour version and some additional documents like a running order and a kit list. So before I knew it, it was the last week of my internship. At the end of that week, we had the program launch show, nicknamed Demo Day, and this was going to be the last event of my internship. We spent some time that week brainstorming which demos to include and rehearsed any non-standard ones the day before and the day of the show. For example, here is a rehearsal clip of the Tesla coil finale demo, where it pops a balloon. Then it was showtime, and I got to do a few demos in this one: a flower shower, a hydrogen balloon, which I was an expert in by this point, and the Tesla coil. But the most fun part was definitely hoovering the floor after the fire tornado.
Probably point out that about 30% of being in a demo team is hoovering.
Obviously I'm joking, the most fun part was definitely the Tesla coil. I was actually pretty scared before trying it during rehearsals, but it went really well, and we played into the idea of it being dangerous for me, even though it definitely wasn't.
Because of lectures, and has produced an amazing version of the show that we're going to do in our family fun day in February, but also take to Hong Kong as part of Croucher Science Week. And to celebrate that, we are going to, I don't know, Harry Potter you? Is that a term? If you would like to add your hand into that.
I know too much, they're trying to get rid of me.
It's cheaper than doing the paperwork. Right. So, what I'm just going to do here is put the loop down towards you, so it's too much of a stretch. I'm sure that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to move at least 2 meters away, and I'm going to ask Millie to go 2 centimeters away, because we want her to be connected back to the system. Okay, so, Jason, you're happy? Happy? Okay, I'm enabling. I've turned up the frequency, and everyone say goodbye. No, sorry. Hello, Millie.
Goodbye, Millie.
You don't get to take the power from me.
And that's it. That was the story of my 3-month internship with the RI. It was by far one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I'm so grateful to everyone at the RI for welcoming me and being so amazing to work with, but especially the demo team and everyone who was there for filming. They were all incredible people to work with, and I'm really going to miss them. Thank you also to my department for providing me with the financial support to do this internship. Stay tuned for my next video, which will be my first PhD vlog, and thank you for watching. Bye.